Gentlemen. Oh, I am live. I think we can hear me now. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to welcome you here to the backyard at Bloss. And it's an absolute pleasure to be here in sunny Dingle. Look, didn't the sun come out for us this morning? You know, it knew that we needed a boost of good weather now at this stage because we've had such a disastrous summer. But it's really lovely to be here, and it always is a pleasure to get to Dingle and to see all the amazing food and amazing food producers. And you know, the tent inside is rammed as they're all getting the awards. So to be so exciting to see the big list of winners. But no matter how you like where you fit into the awards inside. If you've been shortlisted, you're a winner. If you've got here, you're a winner because there's so much competition. And I've been following involved in Bloss in the judging from very early days, and it's just amazing to see it going from strength to strength. So yeah, so that's what's lovely about being here. So the title of this is Better Together, and so I'm going to introduce Kate Ryan. This is Kate Ryan here next to me. She is an award-winning food writer and the founder of Flavour.ie. And most importantly, she's the 2023 Bloss na HÉireann Producers Champion. That was no surprise. Because
What's
Kate,
to me, Caroline?
well, and it's a huge award. Like, it's a really important award because it is voted for by the producers, many of whom Kate knows and has worked with over the years and has written about and investigated and seeked out. And Kate has always been out there to try and find the best stories and document them, which is also a very important part of, I think, what we do as food writers, and to broadcast them in print format at the moment out there to the world. Because unless, you know, if you have the best product in the world and if you have no audience, and I'm talking about this in terms of consumers as well as readers, then, you know, it's very difficult to make a go of it. You'll find her work in the Echo, the Irish Examiner, BBC, Scoop Magazine, Vittles, Irish Foodie, and the Journal.ie, and that is not by any means an exhaustive list. This summer, she presented a paper on black pudding at the Oxford Food Symposium based on her postgraduate diploma in Irish food culture at UCC. So I love the idea of like Irish black pudding, flying the flag for it over in Oxford. So well done for that, Kate. And when she's not writing, she's growing. And at the moment, she's embarking on a whole new adventure called Flavour HQ, where she's got some land and she's going to be taking that on. So that's the next adventure from Kate, and Farmer Kate will be here next year to tell you all about her adventures there. So the whole idea about Better Together, as you know, from your perspective, Kate, you know, what examples between producers have been really successful?
Well, I always like to kind of go back to where, you know, I first started, and because I don't think Flavour.ie would be what it is today if I didn't recognise the value of collaboration at the very beginning of my journey, 11, nearly 12 years ago at this stage. You know, and as a fledgling novice food writer out there, you know, I felt like what I really wanted to do was kind of embrace the idea of storytelling. And while I was trying to establish myself as a food writer, I thought a really good complementary way to do that would be to kind of develop tours and develop pop-up events where I could work with many other kind of different people, whether that was food producers, drinks producers, chefs, quirky venues, you know, and just kind of find a really engaging way to tell the story of food. And that was an enormous springboard for me because it just created this kind of perfect self-fulfilling cycle of finding interesting people to work with, creating relationships and friendships and growing networks, finding stories through those kind of events and activities, and then taking that and being able to pitch stories then that I could then write about and kind of create an even wider platform for me to be able to tell their story. So that kind of went on for a huge number of years. And, you know, I kind of look around the room here and I can see people sat here where I've collaborated with over the years, and
me,
including you, Caroline, you know, and we've kind of developed really strong friendships as a side of that. And I think, you know, it's not just about, you know, we're both based in Cork, you know, we love talking about Cork, obviously, but like those relationships extend all over the country. And I think, you know, when I think about then like Better Together, that for me is kind of the essence of it. It's about how can we all help each other to kind of strengthen our power in a way of to kind of showcase what we can do, whether that's a producer, whether that's a chef, whether that's a venue that just happens to give great service, whether that's us as writers. You know, we are all part of the same drive, I suppose, to showcase the very best of what Irish food and drink is and can be.
There's a real synergy when you talk about that, when you bring together the right food and the right time and the right people in the right place, and I think that's a huge value for pop-up events, and there's a lot of that happening nowadays because rents are so incredibly high. So do you think like that is a way that people can as you used it for a next step in your career, because you were like, okay, I have to make a space for myself. So, and you worked collaboratively to do that.
Well, I think, what's kind of really interesting as well now is that you see very high profile chefs, for example, giving voice to smaller producers as well, by putting them on their menu. We're seeing some incredible, as you rightly say, kind of pop-up events happening around the country with really high profile chefs, and they're bringing these producers with them to kind of do these exclusive events, that are short-lived, ephemeral almost in nature. They're there and then they just disappear, which was what I loved about the pop-up scene anyway. So it's kind of like that whole thing about chefs are very important to that whole story. But one of the things I kind of think is a food writer in Flavour.ie was always truly about was kind of showcasing how these amazing products did as well in our home kitchens as they did, like on the bigger scale. So I think there's kind of gotten a point here in Ireland, for me as an outside observer, as a non-food producer, but just somebody that loves the food scene entirely, is how there seems to be these kind of like layers happening within the whole industry. So, we can't talk about Irish food unless we talk about, the pioneers that kind of started the sort of new wave in food, Irish food, way back in the 60s and 70s. And it seems to me as though there's kind of like this point in time where there became a critical enough mass of those kind of small scale pioneering food producers, not just in West Cork, but all over Ireland, where then something like Blas na Heron needed to exist, and RT and Fallon both recognised that was important, that there was no way to recognise the achievements of these small producers. So into the mix then we have sort of Blas na Heron coming in, championing via the format of awards and celebration, how fabulous, and varied the variety is. And as RT has kind of said there in his opening address there this morning in the awards tent, this year they've had more entries than ever before in the history of Blas na Heron. So we're kind of getting to the point now where it's just we're reaching another stage of that critical mass. And one of the things that kind of came out is that I don't want to use the word trend as such, but kind of one of the things that really came out from this year's entrance was that we're now seeing this kind of situation whereby you've got enough mass, stable mass of quality Irish food producers now to be able for there to exist a collaborative layer between other food producers. So whether, and that we've kind of seen that in a lot of the food products that are out there now as finalists. We've got chocolate and fudge mixing with different types of sea salt. We've got I know there's Berra Distillery, working with Wild Atlantic Way sea salt. There's I bumped into Tom Durkin today and Victor Franca, and they're collaborating together with, chimichurri sauces and mayonnaises for Victor's over the fire meat cookery enterprise. So this is what I find is exciting now, is we've kind of reached that stage in Ireland where we've got huge mass of really great quality products and innovators and thinkers, and now there's that openness to collaboration between the food producers as well. So it's almost kind of like it's got this huge momentum now that is just pushing itself forward, and people aren't afraid to take risk, to take gamble, try things and see if it will work. Because I think in the spirit of cooperation and just wanting to make something delicious, good is only ever going to come out of it, So I think that's what's exciting.
The product is one thing, but there's also the act of collaborating with another food producer. And a lot of the people that I've been speaking to, because when you're down here, it's like that whole food scene. It is very multi-layered. You know, you have the producers, and you have the retailers, and you have the journalists, and you have the, you know, like people coming in at lots of different angles, and all liking and loving really good Irish food, and that's what's very important. But when you're here, and when you're talking, you meet people. There's that lovely kind of informality about Blas, where you can just go up and chat to anybody, and you don't know who you're going to be sitting next to in the coffee shop or in the pub, and you go, oh, you know, we could maybe do something together. But you know, I was talking to Rob from Velo earlier, and he was saying something about, you know, if producers talk, they can avoid different pitfalls.
Yes.
It's like having access to people in that collaborative way, and even if you never make a product together, but just having that kind of access where you can go, oh, I have an issue, who should I talk to about it? Well, I know this person or that person that I met at Blas, and they might have some insight. And that's the wonderful thing about collaboration. It works on many different layers.
I think it's so true. I hear it so often, and I'm sure you do too, Caroline, in our work as food writers, is how people have been able to reach out to other people to troubleshoot. And I think one of the great things that we kind of get to experience as food writers is some of the end products of that. So we have the way that not just us, but anybody can kind of experience these food producer networks that are popping up all around the country, you know, where they're trying to do many, many different things, but the crux of it, it's about, again, collaboratively coming together to kind of strengthen the value of that network and figuring out what is actually everyone doing in this area. How can we work together? Is there another way that we can kind of showcase what we're doing and create an experience for people to engage with? And most of the time then that turns into some sort of tourism proposition where you could say like Taste Wexford or the Tipperary Food Producers Network and things like this. Even down in Dingle, you know, the cohesion, I suppose, between Blas and Heron and the Dingle Food Festival as well, kind of, you know, it's sort of this beautiful mashup of a kind of just deliciousness over an entire weekend. These things are really, really important, because it's one thing to be, you know, and I do get very sort of aspirational, and, you know, I float around an awful lot in my little Katie bubble. But, you know, actually, you know, producing food is a difficult process, and it's wrought with challenges. So if there's a way you can access that kind of hive mind of information to help you navigate it in such a way that you don't keep making the same pitfalls as everybody else, that you can kind of then leapfrog those and get to where you want to be quicker, stronger, more resilient, and along the way then you're building this kind of community of people around you, behind you, and within you, then, you know, this is all just for the good, really, and just accelerates the whole process. You know, I think there's this real kind of sense of power in doing that. I just hear stories over and over again of people saying, oh, I spoke to so-and-so, or I spoke to so-and-so about packaging, or how to access export market, or what to do about accessing LEO support, or whatever it could be, you know, the kind of the nuts and bolts of building a business and a brand, you know. These are the things that sometimes, you know, you have a great product, you have a great product, but how do you get it from here to out there, you know? And that's where these kind of networks and platforms like Blas and Heron as well are perfect for that, because it is just for a few days, it's this huge microcosm of just everybody from all aspects of the food system and industry coming together, and we're all here for each other.
And the thing is, we're all here, like we're literally right here. So it's very difficult to miss us. And that's a lovely thing, that you have access. And you have access anyway, because it's easy. Ireland's a very small country. You will always know somebody who knows somebody who can give you a hand, like that packaging idea. It's like, you know, I used to work in the brewery industry, and, you know, brewers are always ringing up going, oh, my caps delivery hasn't come in, have you got any? And sending somebody off on a road trip to pick them up, you know. And it's like, it's again your peers, as well as, like, you know, you're in the same industry, so obviously you're competing in some different ways for the same market. In lots of ways you're not. You're competing against the big boys, which you want to knock out of the park, whereas you're happy to drink all your peers' beers. Peers beers is a
Peers
great word.
beers.
Yeah. So but you have all that going on, and so when you're on the phone going, you know, do you have any caps? You're like, oh, and listen, that bar down the road, don't go near it. they're not paying us, and being able to share those kind of things can make a big difference, in a business, because it can make the difference between getting your bills paid at the end of the day or not getting them paid. Which is a bit of a challenge as well.
There's a lot of trust in this industry.
Yes.
And it's hard earned and easily lost. So, I think working together and sharing those war stories, that helps. It just helps people to kind of garner that trust between people, know where the right routes are, know where to avoid. It's just really important. I think especially in this day and age as well, where, margins are cut so thin, things are very tight. Maybe, manoeuvring between things or navigating the system isn't quite as simple as maybe it was, even 5 years ago. It's just really important to have that network behind you. And when you were saying there about work, when you're working in the brewery range, where do I find caps from? Again, that's another thing. Like, there's this duality, isn't there, always in food, that you're in competition with somebody, but you also need to cooperate with them as well. And I was talking to somebody last night in a Flaherty's bar over a cheeky G&T.
I was about to say in the pub, yeah.
Obviously, all the best conversations happen in the pub. But kind of saying like that, there's kind of this network of people. They all make the same kind of product. I won't reveal what it is, but they have this kind of mutual understanding that they are in direct competition with each other. They are competitors, but if either one of their central piece of equipment breaks down, they know they can call the other one, and they'll make their equipment available for them. Because that's the beauty, I think, of the food system. Is that you can be in cooperation and competition at exactly the same time.
And also, as small producers, you always have somebody that you're really bucking against. That's way up there that you
somebody
really
that
don't
unifies
mind.
you.
Yeah, you don't mind if you take out their taps. So there's always that kind of element as well. In terms of, like, as a food writer, when you come across producers collaborating, how does that work for you? Do you find it makes a good story? Is it a good hook as well?
It is, definitely.
Pitching things as
well.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Because that's what we spend all our time doing.
Yeah. The glamour, the not so glamorous side of food writing. But look, as writers, we're looking for stories. Stories are what makes the world go round. Is what we love. Certainly in this nation, stories we just engage with in a really different way, I think. If you can find somebody with a compelling story, that's one win. If you can find two producers working together with a compelling story, that is a whole other proposition, and makes it very interesting from a food writing perspective. And editors love it, So we have to pitch in with our stories and our ideas, and we have to sell your story in order for us to be able to come and then talk to you, to be able to write your story, to sell it to the wider audience. So if we can make it compelling by kind of saying, look, there's these 2, 3, 4 network of people kind of working together to do something really, really interesting down in wherever, this will just, the editors will just bite your hand off for that kind of proposition for copy.
It's a very edible metaphor there now. But it is true. And I do find that it's like, whether it's a couple of people working together, but also it's sometimes a producer, working with somebody else, and you're like, oh, that's interesting. So it leads you on to discover a new producer and to find somebody else. Yeah. And, that's, again, a benefit of collaborative work.
And there's also the kind of the quiet collaborations, if I would say. So, the producer who is there, and maybe they're a farmer or a primary food producer, or they're making something else like a sauce or a chutney or whatever. And by virtue of the process of what they're making, they're working with a much wider network quite quietly. They probably don't even realise the value of how they're collaborating with all these other people. But you might have somebody like, say, for instance, there's somebody. Oh, hang on, John? Was it you in the Pitt Brothers? There was a food product there that was being packaged with sheep's wool. So sheep's wool, is kind of like quite a wasteful kind of product in one way, because it sells for nothing. It's a very undervalued item, but it can be repurposed for packaging that is environmentally friendly, or you've got somebody that's saying, I've got this kind of, waste product that can, like an apple farm, a cider maker or something, and their waste kind of apple chuff goes off to feed the local pigs, which gets turned into delicious bacon, which hopefully will win awards at Blosnair later on, So, there's all these kind of quiet collaborations that kind of happen outside of like the big starry sort of named so-and-so and so-and-so working together. And those are also kind of really interesting, because there was something that kind of was raised there last weekend. We talk a lot about food sovereignty, so like Ireland being able to kind of, create its own food, have its own food system that supports itself. But more than that, there's local food sovereignty as well. So that concept, but on a smaller level, all the other kind of small local businesses that kind of need that collaborative model to be able to survive but thrive as well, So I think, food sovereignty is quite a lofty kind of idea, but when you kind of break it down into maybe what's happening in Dingle, or what's happening in Tipperary, or in West Cork, or, we were in Wexford, like that's where it becomes a tangible thing where you can see it in action,
And like collaboration also extends to markets. We've like when you can go to a market and you can walk around and you can see, like, there's very few food producers who go and set up a market stall without being friends with the people who are in the immediate group, and they all do a lot of barter and things like that. And that's things come out of that as well, products and ideas and working together. And that's always fun. But one of the main things that I think is very interesting as well is retailers, and how retailers can collaborate with producers and bring their products to market. Because again, if you have a product and if you have no one to sell it for you, it's a very hard way to make an impact.
Oh, absolutely. I think, small specialist retailers are some of the unsung heroes of our food system. I genuinely believe it. There's where I'm from West Cork. I tell people, everybody, I'm from West Cork with my very broad West Cork accent, obviously. But, we have people like Uru, we have people like Mannings, I say super value, but we have Fields and we have Scallies, that were some of the pioneers about bringing in and supporting this kind of rich theme of local food producers. Ardkeen, Indie Food, Sheridan's.
And
there's
Sheridan's
so many.
Collaborate very much with producers to produce crackers, chutneys, all these different kind of things that they can put on the shelves and sell out there as well.
Yeah. And they're normally like the first people to recognise that there's a product that would fit very well on their shelves, and they are champions for those people. Take somebody like Ruth Healy, who runs a small culinary store in Bandon called Uru, and she will know every single product on her shelf. She knows the person, she's shaken their hand, she knows their story, she knows exactly how that product's made, and she knows exactly how to sell it to her customers as well. And without somebody like that championing you, giving the producer a platform to sell your product, where would you be? Because you'll either be just sell. You can sell by yourself. You can tap into amazing online networks like Neighbour Food. You can sell at markets, but that bit in between, that kind of scale and getting into retail are the small
there's the
culinary stores.
Even like Peter Ward in Nina, and until recently in Limerick, and amazing man. Like you'd walk into the shop for a sandwich and you'd come out with your arms laden with different things that he persuaded you to buy, and he didn't like. The great thing about the shopkeepers of Ireland who do in these small retail places is that they don't sell, they just tell. They tell you the story, and before you know it, you're stocking up on all these fabulous things.
Ruth knows it too. I might as well just walk in with my wallet open and just be like, what books are you going to sell me today? What chutneys are, what cheese is good, what bread is good, She just takes all my money and I'm quite happy for her to do it,
And I do think it's very interesting with what Sheridan's have done then, because they work collaboratively with all the cheesemongers, because obviously when you're bringing cheese to market, it's a live and breathing object, and it needs to be very collaboratively cared for to get it to that stage. And then, they've like gone into the different areas where they produce the chutneys and the crackers and things. And then they put on, like, they had a food festival last weekend at Sheridan's, and then they'll be having, farmers markets again. So, they have developed this whole fabulous group of people around them, and sometimes it takes one person, one retailer, one space, and then you can have lots of different collaborative efforts coming out of that.
Exactly, and they are the linchpin in communities as well, and they're trusted. Goes back to that trust word again. When people go into these places, yes, they're curious, they're probably hungry, they're looking for something to fill a gap in their larder or in their cheese selection or whatever.
There's always a gap in my cheese selection anyway.
It's always, but they'll come in and whatever that person recommends, that's what they'll buy, because there is that relationship of trust there, and that goes both ways. So they're literally this linchpin in the whole system between where the food comes from, where the food's going to, and then those kind of track marks of trust then that kind of just spread out throughout the community that they're based in. And a lot of them as well are long-standing. I mean, how long has Sheridan's been around? Look how long Manning's has been around. Actually, next end of this month, Ruth is celebrating 20 years in business.
Yeah.
That's
no easy thing for any of those people to be constantly, not only constantly there, but constantly producing things or selling things with such a high quality. And it's no easy way to make a living. It's like there's lots of areas in the food world that it's hard work, but standing behind a counter, and I know because I worked in Uru for a year, and that's a challenge. But it's a brilliant thing to do, and one of the lovely things about working there was that I got to tell people about all these fabulous producers, and I got to learn about all these producers as well. And the producers who came in and spoke to us and made personal deliveries into. Now that this was a different Uru, it wasn't in Bandon at the time, but it was you developed a relationship, and it's great then because you can move forward, because you can totally sell their products, because you're able to tell people about them. Yeah, Peter Ward used to come in and do deliveries of pasta and olive oil at one stage, and before I knew it, I'd spent my entire wages like on bottles of olive oil and absolutely the most amazing pasta that we savoured very slowly and really, really relished. But it's great because if you buy from these people, you are getting, you're trusting them, and you're never going to waste your money.
No.
Before we, Kate and myself know each other. We could be here for the whole morning. This is what we talk about anyway. But I'd like to open it up to the floor. Has anybody got any questions? Because Vivian has the mic there, and she can. Everybody's a bit. Oh, there's two questions there.
I just have a question about sort of technical expertise. We were hoping to introduce a gluten-free version of our puddings next year. And would you recommend partnering with a gluten-free bakery as a way to go with that? That's what we're kind of hoping to do. And would you have any advice on that?
Ooh,
that's
my God.
What do you produce?
Alternative Christmas pudding.
Hi.
Right.
She does. She loves to sell your products as well. Yeah.
Here is a great place to go looking at who's producing the best gluten-free products and talk to them. And, you'll lose nothing by talking, and you may gain and win something. I think it's very hard to make a definitive recommendation there, but definitely go out there and see who's producing really good products. And because you need lots of breadcrumbs.
Yeah, I think that's the key, is to find another producer that works to the same kind of standard that you work to. I think when you're looking to do something different or add something new into your product range that you can't for whatever reason do yourself, go for the same level of quality, because ultimately it's your product, your brand, and that's what you must protect at all costs, really. Yeah.
And that's really important. And if you find somebody who's at the same level as you and you work really well together, put their name on your label.
Yeah.
That makes a story. And again,
Yeah.
like, you know, Kate and myself are always going, oh, look, there's something. You pick up something and go, oh, there's a little story right there. John, I think you had a question there.
Thank you for your question.
Thank you. I'm just wondering, on the one hand, Blois acknowledges the success of artisanal producers, artisanal scale producers, but I'm just wondering when the breakthrough is going to happen that local authorities have a mandate from the government to purchase food, not just at the cheapest price, to sell in government canteens and in schools and other places, but where they copy the slow food model and say, you have got to buy Irish apples and Maharee's carrots and Irish meat, and it's not simply a question of the industry that sells ingredients to you at the lowest price. I mean, that was always an important element of the slow food mandate. I've not seen any movement on that in either local or national government in Ireland. You never hear our politicians talking about it. Any statements they make on food are generally pathetic. Like, when are we actually going to have a minister for food who is going to say this can be a sea change in terms of distributing central funds to local producers?
This came up actually last week. So last week I was at a festival in Dublin at IMA, the Modern Museum of Art in Dublin, called Earth Rising. And there was a tent called the Field Tent, and it was a new edition, and it was all conversations about food. And this exact point came up during it. There were obviously farmers, food producers, chefs, activists, everybody was kind of talking, and this point came up time and time again. When is this going to happen? When, exact words, when will we have a ministry of food? Or just even that somebody that can talk sense on food.
Or somebody who actively enjoys and appreciates Irish food.
Yeah. It's not an easy question because it boils down to policy, and policy feeds into kind of food system, which feeds into maybe like funding and how the Irish food system aligns to kind of other macro kind of systems, I suppose. But I think it could be as simple as adopting a policy that is actually enforced, saying that if all food that was provided to institutions, for example, I was reading this somewhere, that if all food was supplied to institutions, so schools, hospitals, prisons even, they deserve good food as well, arguably, any kind of institutional organisation like that, if the government policy alone in those areas was to source and procure food that was of a baseline, a relatively steady, good baseline of nutritional content, short food chains, low emissions, maybe organic or chemical free at minimum, any kind of mix of those sort of policy decisions built into something for procurement for food for institutions would make a huge difference to the producers, to the growers, to the primary food producers in those areas. And it would count something like 1% or something like that. But the resultant impact,
the financial impact
on that could mean the difference between us having a horticultural industry and not, or having being able to support things like small-scale abattoirs, craft butchers, that kind of thing, and only having an industrialized meat system. These are kind of like the small tweaks in policy that can have enormous effect for Ireland's food sovereignty, and the choice that we have over the empowerment that we have over the choices we have. It's another kind of network. It's another kind of collaborative model at the end of the day. But when? I don't know. I think that generally there does seem to be more conversation happening about, the realization that this needs to happen and this kind of change needs to happen quickly, if for anything else, just because of the potential positive impact on climate mitigation that it can have. When is the $1 million question, John, isn't it? Like, who's going to be bold enough, brave enough in a government setting to actually be able to say, by doing this, we can actually affect all these changes? Because as we all know, sat in the room here, we're talking about food as though it's like a thing on its own, a tangible thing on its own, but it's ephemeral and it connects everything and everyone together. So a small change here, a tweak there, can just have this enormous impact across the whole of who we are and where we are in society. Basically, that's quite grand. But do you know what I mean?
But it is like small changes can make a huge impact. And with the talk about sovereignty.
Sovereignty.
I knew I was going to get that wrong. Talk of sovereignty and about having our own food and everything. And I think this all came home to us very much during the lockdowns and the shortage of flour. And then suddenly people started going, oh, but is this not Irish flour? It's in an Irish pack. And even just like small things like that. So I know I've buying my flour since then, because again, it hadn't clicked with me. And you'd think, I'm a food writer, I should have known these things. And so I've been buying my flour from people who grow, mill and sell it. And I consider myself incredibly fortunate to be able to do that with the likes of small mills like Ballymore in Ballymore Organics, the Future Forest Mills. There's like a whole host of little mills now around the country producing really good flour. And it's one small thing, but and it does make my kitchen a bit messier because I buy now 5 kilo bags instead of like smaller bags, sometimes larger bags. But it's something, and I know that the food I'm cooking with that is nutritionally better for you. It's nutritionally more dense. A lot of these producers are growing organically, so I'm having me making a cake with organic Irish flour makes a huge. As we talk about food, there go the toilets, and that's where it'll all go in the end. But that's the kind of thing. It's like put small little changes. I'm only one person, but I'm one person who shouts about it. I'm one person who writes about it. And, we've given, in the Irish Food Writers Guild, of which Kate and myself are members, we've given awards to Irish millers as well. And I think, again, it's really, really important. A few years ago, you weren't able to get your hands on fresh milled Irish flour. That was very difficult. So now, at least, we're getting a little bit better. And, to go back to where you were talking about initially with the cheese coming out of West Cork, who growing up in Ireland today could imagine a country that only had blocks of cheddar and blocks of red cheddar at that, because God forbid you'd eat the white stuff. So anybody else got any questions? Yeah. Vivian?
Thanks, John.
It's basically a follow-up from that question, because Ireland has a habitat and biodiversity crisis with climate change, and I think if we could add that and hopefully get a minister that speaks up, to all the small food producers can really help habitat and biodiversity. And in your answer in Copenhagen, the local council, they sort of mandate procurement for, I can't remember, huge percentages of organics.
Yes.
And they have found in prisons, etc., reoffending less when the good food is eaten. So it's already there, the template's there, and I don't know why we don't see outside the box as well for that. So
yeah, again, you're dead. Yeah, it's another form of collaboration. I was having conversations very similar with somebody else recently, kind of saying, why is there always this drive to try and reinvent the wheel? Why can we not just look to see where these models are already in place and working, and just import them, as like we import so many other things? Just why can't we import ideas and systems and processes? I'd love to kind of see things like that. But yeah, the biodiversity thing is really interesting, and it's the real hot potato, isn't it? That's kind of coming out at the moment. And I was speaking there with a beef farmer out in County Sligo, and he's got this really kind of ingenious way of kind of grazing his cattle, where he has this incredible grazing plan. I mean, it looks like nothing on earth I've ever seen, But he's creating great volumes of beef, really high quality, very high nutrient, by managing the land in this very kind of sympathetic, kind of almost micromanaged way, but he's very hands off actually. He's like, he calls himself a lazy farmer, you know, and that's his goal in life. But he does it all by kind of increasing the biodiversity on his land. You know, he's planting trees and hedgerows, and he's sampling his soil. You know, everything starts with the soil. So, you know, there are people out there doing really, really good things. There are fantastic templates out there for lots of people to kind of follow suit.
Yes.
Absolutely, yeah.
Joined up thinking
Yes.
is what we're missing. And joined up thinking is collaborative thinking. So there I go, tying it all up. Listen, Kate, thank you so much for talking to us today. And thank you so much for being the producer's champion. I know it's...
Pleasure. Thank you very much.